Hello, good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here, particularly good as I've never been to Moscow before. This is my first time, so it's really good to see the city and that events like this are happening. It's really great, so it's good to be here. So this is the theme of my talk this afternoon, how product-led companies drive business outcomes. And I'm going to introduce a framework to you that we use at Amplitude to develop our product and how we are seeing product-led companies who are excelling in the world of product, how they are building products. But before I do, who here has heard of Amplitude? Let's start there. Great, yeah, this is encouraging. Okay, so I'll just give you a very quick overview of what we do, and then I'll talk about the framework. So we are a product analytics platform, and our mission is to help companies build better products. And the way that we do that is we provide an intuitive self-service analytics platform for anyone across a business to run analysis, look at data, and help businesses make smarter decisions about their product based on the data that we provide. We launched in 2014. We've had incredible growth. We've raised lots of funding from some top venture capitalists in Silicon Valley. We are a Silicon Valley startup. That's where we come from. We have 300 employees globally in 7 offices. So just to give you an idea of our growth, I started at the company a year ago, and we were about 140 people, and we've over doubled in a year. So we're seeing some incredible growth. And a very exciting piece of news recently was that we are predicted to be the next billion-dollar company. So that's really exciting times at Amplitude. Okay, so a little bit about me. That sort of ties into why I'm here and what I'm talking about. So as I said, I've been at Amplitude for a year. My career, I started in digital in marketing. I was buying ad campaigns for my customers. And when I think back at the sort of metrics that I was being measured then and my team was being measured on back then, it was things like, very typical marketing metrics: ads served, clicks on ads, click-through rates, landings on landing pages, and then right down at the bottom of the funnel, did users convert? Did they perform the action of value? What users were doing in between landing on the platform and converting, nobody was looking at, no one cared. And this was really puzzling to me. I then moved into product. I had my first experience of product analytics. And really, I've spent a lot of my career trying to get product teams to be more data-informed. And now I'm helping Amplitude customers to do that. So that's why I'm here. I wanted to talk about a few trends that we're seeing in the world of product. We obviously work with a lot of different product teams from all industries. The first thing is we are seeing the introduction of science into product development. Now, this might seem quite obvious to data people in the room, but when we think about product development, we often think about the art of product development. We don't always think about the science of product development. And that's where Amplitude is helping customers to make this shift. So if we think about marketing went through this big shift years ago. In 2019, a marketing team would never launch a marketing campaign without having tracking in place and being held accountable for those metrics and being held accountable for the investment the business has made in that marketing campaign. And so the shift we're seeing is that this is starting to happen in product. And this is where product analytics comes in, and this is where Amplitude is helping our customers. A quick history lesson for you. So this line here, this is how long it took the internet to reach 100 million users. Right? 8 years. This is some impressive growth. Pokemon Go, it took them 3 days to reach 100 million users. And so the second trend and observation I wanted to highlight is just the sheer speed at which things are changing. Things are moving really, really fast. And so we as product teams, we need to be setting strategies that keep up with this pace. And it's not just happening in gaming. We're seeing it in media, e-commerce, B2B, fintech. All these companies and these brands are being disrupted. These industries are being disrupted by product. So these brands up here is what we call at Amplitude product-led companies. Ultimately, as customers and users, we want to give our time and money to companies and brands that create these innovative, rich experiences for us. And so these companies up here, these are very much product-led companies. So I just want to talk a little bit more about what product-led means. So the third observation is that product-led companies are winning. They are definitely winning. So really low barriers of entry now. Anyone who knows how can write a piece of code and launch an app. They can take a product to market. So the barrier to entry has never been lower. And this is great, but it means that competition is very fierce. We estimate that there's over 5 million apps out there with just a survival rate of 0.01%. So massive, massive fail rate. So we believe, and we're seeing it across the board, that customer experience and value trump everything. So this is what we mean by product-led. Product teams from product-led companies, they're no longer just measured on activity. They're measured on impact. So this means that the success of a product team is no longer just measured by how many features you release, what we call a feature factory. But actually, the success of a product team is being measured by impact, the real impact they are having on the business. Are they driving revenue? So what we're seeing is this shift of product actually being a generator of revenue, not just a cost to the business, which has historically been the truth, but actually generating revenue for the business and having real impact on the business, which essentially is revenue, product driving revenue. And I love this quote. This is from Jeff Bezos, the CEO of Amazon. Amazon's financial performance for the next few quarters is already sealed. The investments we are making in product, not sales, not marketing, not brand, product, right now will drive how we perform in 2019 and after. So this is a quote he gave to a journalist last year, and this is how a leader from a product-led company speaks. He knows the investment they are making in product is a good predictor for how they will perform in the future. So Amazon, very much a product-led company. Okay, so I'm going to jump into the framework now and show you what this means in reality. How do you become a product-led company, and what sort of strategies and approaches can you put in place to make this shift? Most companies, they have a vision. Typically the world that the business wants to create. And that vision leads to impact. So at some point, that vision will lead to revenue for the business. And the strategy is the path to get there. And data is the guiding light for whether you are achieving or delivering on your product strategy. And this is where I want to introduce the concept of the North Star metric. The North Star metric is a very, very powerful concept that we use and product-led companies use. We think it's really, really important. So the North Star metric and the metrics around the North Star metric is how you determine as a product team whether you are delivering on your strategy. So really there's 3 steps to this process. The first, define the game you're playing. Okay, so we think product is a game, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. So once you've defined the game you're playing, you can define the rules of the game, and you can score the game. And you need to identify the North Star metric. And the North Star metric should be a leading indicator of success. And I will talk a bit more about that as well in a moment. Once you have your North Star metric, you then need to think about what the input metrics that are driving that North Star metric. And once you have all that, you can start to build your product strategy. And I will go through each of these steps one by one now. So step one, define the game you're playing. So if we think about the game of chess, very difficult game, you need a strategy to win that game. Professional chess players will know many places ahead, or many moves ahead, how they're going to move in order to win the game. They have a strategy. And so we think product is very much the same. We've spoken to lots of product teams. We've done lots of research. And we think there is 3 games a product team can play, or one of 3 games that a product team can play. The first is the attention game. Now, the rules of this game are how much of your user or customer's time can you capture in your product? How much of their time can you get them to spend in your product? Secondly, the transaction game. The transaction game, the rules of this game are how many high-value transactions can you get a user to perform in your product? And then thirdly, the productivity game. The rules of the productivity game are how many high-value tasks around productivity can you get a user to perform. Once you know this, you can start to understand the rules of the game and score the game. And this is where the North Star metric comes in. So we need to identify the North Star metric. Now I'm going to go through some examples of North Star metrics against each of these games and just talk about those individually. So with attention game, typically we're looking at metrics like time spent. How much time did a user spend in the platform? Does anyone want to guess or shout out a typical company playing the attention game? Facebook. Brilliant. Exactly. So typically, media companies are playing the attention game. So Facebook's North Star metric will be something like total time spent engaging with content. Now notice it's not just daily active users or app opened or page viewed. It's actually a measure of a user getting value out of the product. And this is a really important concept for the North Star metric. And we'll talk more about that shortly. Netflix. So their North Star metric is number of subscribers streaming for a certain amount of hours per month. Notice that it's capped at 60 hours, and it's not just endless streaming. Now, the reason for that is, it may be quite obvious to some of you, is that they are obviously a subscription model business. So if the more content that we as customers watch, it could impact their bottom line when they start getting into streaming costs. And so they know that users that stream for a certain amount of time per month are much more likely not to leave Netflix, not to churn. And so this is a really good leading indicator of success for Netflix. YouTube. YouTube's a really interesting one for me because of my previous job. I worked for a video streaming platform in my previous company. YouTube's North Star metric is daily watch time. In 2012, they set a really ambitious goal to try and reach 1 billion streaming hours per day. Really ambitious goal. At that point, that was 10 times greater than what they were achieving at that time. So it was really ambitious. And it was a 4-year plan. After 4 years, they hit it. They reached that 1 billion goal. And the thing I love about this is it demonstrates how the North Star metric drives alignment across a business. So if you think about that, everything for that 4-year period that Netflix did, brilliant. So everything that YouTube did over that 4-year period was to drive that metric. So every decision they made about the product, every decision they made in the business, if it wasn't to impact that metric, they didn't do it. They moved on. And so it just brought this beautiful alignment across the business, and it worked. Forgive me. Okay, I don't know why that's there. It's gone. So the transaction game. Typical companies playing the transaction game. Anyone want to? It's quite obvious. Yeah, Amazon. It's the classic one. So yeah, typically e-commerce, anywhere where there's transactions, monetary transactions happening. I really love Amazon's North Star metric, number of purchases per Prime subscriber. So is everyone here familiar with Prime as a business model? Prime being the monthly subscription, you pay a monthly fee, and you get unlimited free delivery on your purchases. Now, again, notice it's number of purchases per Prime subscriber and not just number of purchases. Obviously, they have the monthly income from the subscription, but they also know that users that are Prime subscribers will spend much, much more in a year. And so they are trying to drive users to become Prime subscribers. If you think about the Amazon homepage, a really, really valuable piece of real estate. So I know this from personal experience at previous companies. When you're working for a big company and you have a homepage which gets a lot of traffic, everybody is fighting over that homepage. All the stakeholders are trying to put their products, their branding on that homepage. And again, what this does is it creates a very clear call to action. So if I'm not a Prime subscriber and I go to amazon.co.uk or amazon.com and I go to the homepage, I will get loads of messages about becoming a Prime subscriber. So again, it adds that alignment. No one can argue about what the call to action should be on that homepage because this is their North Star metric. They know this is a leading indicator of success for them. Productivity. Anyone want to think about who's playing the productivity game? Shout out. Yeah, Slack. So typically B2B. Amplitude, we're very much playing the productivity game, and that's really important to us and our business, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. So there's 3 key components to an effective North Star. Some of these I've already mentioned. This is what makes a good North Star metric. It needs to be a measure of customer value. So again, not app open, ads clicked, page view, a measure of a customer getting real value out of your product, really important. Secondly, it should be aligned with your product strategy. So if we think about Facebook example, imagine their North Star metric was number of ads clicked. That would be great for them. It would get a great revenue driver for them, but it would change their strategy. They would then just put loads and loads and loads of ads on Facebook, which is a very bad experience for us as users. So they might get a really good spike in revenue, but actually long term, it's very damaging to their product and their brand. It wouldn't be a good measure of sustainable growth. And so it needs to be aligned with your product strategy. The Amazon example actually is beautifully descriptive about their strategy. If you have a good North Star metric and somebody knows enough about your business, they should have a pretty good idea of what your product strategy is. And Amazon is a good example of that. Thirdly, it should be a leading indicator of revenue. This doesn't mean that it is revenue, and we hear this a lot. North Star metric, revenue. Revenue is not a good North Star metric because it is a lagging indicator. Okay, so if I think about Amplitude, if our North Star metric as a SaaS B2B company was revenue, and our revenue started to decline, we're in big trouble. Something upstream of that point has happened, which our product team should be across, and they should be able to influence and impact. And that's why a North Star metric should be a leading indicator, not a lagging indicator. Revenue is a lagging indicator. Also, there can be many external factors. If you're running a big campaign or a big sale, something that's very price-focused, that could drive revenue. But it's not something necessarily that the product team can impact. And then thirdly, it's not necessarily a good measure of value. Is the customer receiving value? One other thing a North Star metric is definitely not is a vanity metric. This is something that I've dealt with a lot over my career. This is an example of my previous company. So I worked for a video streaming website, as I said before. And when I joined the company, our North Star metric was videos viewed. And this was a user came onto the platform, the page loaded, the video automatically started, and that was a video view. So we sent an event at that point. And all of our bonuses were tied to this metric. Now, if we go through the 3 components that I talked about a moment ago, video start or video view, is it a measure of customer value? Well, no, it's not. Because if a user's landed on the platform, they haven't done anything. They haven't even viewed content. We've just started a video, so it's not a measure of customer value. Is it aligned with the product strategy? Well, no, because we were trying to be an immersive video streaming experience. And thirdly, leading indicator of revenue. Actually, yes, it was, because we had ads, pre-roll ads that ran before. So if the video start event fired, we knew that a customer had viewed an ad, and that had generated revenue for us. So 2 out of 3 is not very good. And typically how we think about vanity metrics, now vanity metrics are okay. You know, they're not, I'm not saying you shouldn't track vanity metrics, but they shouldn't be your North Star metric, because it's not a measure of customer value. Typically, vanity metrics are very much top of the funnel. North Star metrics should be much deeper in the funnel. So we have a customer in the US called Postmates, and they're a food delivery app. You go on, you order a takeaway, it arrives at your home. And their North Star metric is happy customers. And they know that a happy customer is when a user receives their delivery within time. And if you think about that, that's really deep in the funnel. A customer has had to make multiple actions on the platform before they finally get their delivery at the door. So their North Star metric is a really good, solid North Star metric. Okay, so I'm just going to talk a bit about Amplitude's North Star metric to demonstrate that we do practice what we preach. So a few bits of information about our strategy and what product, the product that we develop at Amplitude. So customers get value out of our product by asking a question about their product. So they go into the platform, they ask a question, they run a query, they get an answer from their data. And then they share that across the organization. That's a measure of a customer getting value. Secondly, our unique strategy is to enable data democracy. So we've created a really clean, user-friendly user interface where anyone can log in and access data. So we're really trying to spread data access across an organization. And then thirdly, as end user adoption of our tool within an organization, as that increases, the value exchange becomes greater. The customer is getting more value, and we at Amplitude, we know that if users are performing our North Star, more and more, they're getting more value, and they're less likely to leave us. They're less likely to churn. So our North Star metric is weekly learning users. And our definition of a weekly learning user is the number of users that create a chart and share that analysis with 2 or more people within a 7-day period. It's a little bit more of a complicated North Star, but we've seen that this is a really good indicator of a customer getting value out of our product. And we actually align, our whole company aligns around this North Star. So I work in the customer success team, so I work with customers when they buy our software, and I make sure they're getting maximum value out of our product. And I'm held accountable to this metric. So if I go into a customer and I run a training session, did I move this metric? So it's not just the product team using it, it's the whole company. It's a really good North Star. So once you've got your North Star metric, you need to get alignment around that. So how do you start to align teams around that North Star metric and start to think about features and initiatives that can shift that metric? And the way that we look at this is what we call the product analytics formula. And this is made up of 4 potential components. The first is breadth. So looking at how many active users there actually are within your product, within your platform. Secondly is depth. What is the depth of engagement? How deep are users going into your platform and engaging with your platform or your product? Thirdly is frequency. How often are customers coming back and performing that action of value? And then finally, efficiency. How fast are they succeeding in your product? Efficiency isn't we see that efficiency isn't relevant for all products, but it's an option to consider. So, to bring this to life, I'm just going to go ahead and apply this framework that I've just talked through to Spotify. And this is something that they very much use when they think about developing their product. So, the CEO of Spotify, Daniel Ek, what does he care about? Well, he cares about a lot of things, but the thing he cares most about is revenue. Certainly since Spotify went public last year, revenue is very important, especially important to keep the shareholders happy. And if we look at how that revenue is broken down, we can look at the two revenue streams for Spotify. I know Spotify isn't in Russia right now, but I've been told it's coming, which is exciting as a passionate user of Spotify. I think that's good news. So there's two revenue streams: premium subscribers, so users that pay a monthly fee, and ad-supported users. These are people that use the platform for free, and they have to listen to ads, so potentially quite annoying. And if we look at what the percentage of the revenue breakdown is between these two cohorts of users, 90% of Spotify's revenue comes from users that subscribe on a monthly basis. If we look at the level of engagement, how much listening hours per month under each cohort, we see a huge difference. So users that consume, and users that subscribe and pay a monthly fee, they listen to 75 hours per month of content compared to 25 hours. So this is a really good indication of Spotify's strategy. They care a lot about these users up here and perhaps less about these users down here. And so this is really important when we think about, well, what's their North Star metric? What's their strategy? What's important to them? So Spotify, probably fairly obvious, they're playing the attention game. And their North Star metric is time spent by subscribers listening to music. So when they think about developing the product, they're actually only thinking about the users that subscribe. So they are developing the product specifically for those users because they bring the most revenue, they bring the most value. Is it a measure of customer value? Yes. The more content I listen to, the more value I get out of it. Is it aligned with their product strategy? Yes, it is. It's aligned with their product strategy of building a product around subscribers. Is it a leading indicator of revenue? Yes. If I'm consuming lots of content on Spotify, I'm a lot less likely to leave Spotify and churn. So, time spent by subscribers listening to music. If we then take the three input components, breadth, depth, frequency, we can put metrics next to each of these. So breadth could be number of trial users or number of premium subscribers. So how many users are actually using the platform in a given month? Depth, number of hours per session. So when I come into the content and into the platform, how many hours am I listening to music for within a session? And how can I increase that metric? And then thirdly, frequency, the number of sessions per week. How many times in a week am I coming in and using the platform? And how can I shift that metric? And once you have these metrics, you can start to think about the features and initiatives that you should be developing on your product. So for Spotify, they are looking at new signups, and they're looking to convert new signups, obviously, to premium trials or premium users. That's a big, big metric for them. Spotify have got a conversion rate of about 27%, which is huge. They've set the gold standard for what it means to convert users. Depth, offline listening. So when I travel anywhere, I always download music. So I can listen to music even when I don't have mobile phone signal. And so they create features like offline listening exactly for that purpose. How do they keep me engaged in the platform even when I don't have access to data, when I don't have a mobile phone signal? Well, we'll create a feature around offline listening. That is created to drive that metric. Recommendations, social listening. What are my friends listening to? Oh, he's listening to this. I'll listen to that as well. How do I go deeper into the platform? And then frequency, things around new artist notifications. So when a new artist joins the platform, I get a notification. They have special features like New Music Monday or Throwback Thursday, special playlists that keep me coming back into the platform. So, outcome. this is really powerful. And ultimately, we're all trying to drive a business outcome in our line of work. But we need to understand that an outcome is a lagging indicator. Once we understand what our leading indicators are and our input metrics are, then we can really start to establish our product strategy. And actually, the product strategy becomes quite simple when you understand this framework. So I'm just going to finish now and summarize the sort of steps that we've just talked about. So first of all, you need to define the game you're playing. Attention, transaction, productivity. Have a think about that. Identify the North Star metric that drives business outcomes. Again, a metric that is a leading indicator. Thirdly, think about the input metrics that are leading indicators around breadth, depth, frequency, efficiency. And then brainstorm and think about initiatives and features that could shift those metrics. Now, I've worked at big companies, I've worked at small companies, and I can tell you now, none of this is simple. But when you think, if this is interesting to you, if this is a framework that you think, yeah, I could take this away and maybe start to apply it, just a few key tips for you. So if you work for a big organization, this is a harder conversation to have. But you can start to think about what your North Star metric could be. So define your North Star metric. Then think about one of those input metrics. Don't try and do them all at the same time. Think about breadth or depth. Think about what those metrics could be and come up with an initiative or an experiment to drive one of those metrics. Because essentially what you're trying to do is prove value to the business. If you can prove value to the business, it's much easier for you to then take that to your boss or whoever in the company and say, I did this and I achieved this. Let's have a conversation about it. Also, we have some really good content. We have some playbooks, Amplitude playbooks. The product analytics playbook, which is all about user retention, how to think about user retention and how to retain your users. And then secondly, a user engagement playbook, which is actually some of the content that I've talked about here. Please take a picture of this slide if this is interesting and download that content from those URLs. I really recommend them. And then finally, a bit of a shameless plug. Tomorrow, you might have seen some leaflets. We're running a North Star workshop tomorrow. It's revisiting this content that I've talked about here today. So it's going over this concept again and actually putting the framework into practice. So we'll break off into groups and I'll ask you to apply this framework in real life. So if you're interested in that, please do come along. Here's the details. We'd love to see you there. And then finally, just to say, if you want to find out more about Amplitude, we do have a stand out here. Please come and see us. Denzel, one of our account executives, I don't think he's in here. He would love to chat with you about how we could help you on your digital journey. And that's everything I wanted to say. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Richard. Если у кого есть вопросы, задавайте. Мы поможем их перевести. Можете сделать это на русском, на любимом родном. Я не вижу ваших рук.
Ask in Russian and translate.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, we have one.
Hi, Richard.
Hello.
Thanks a lot for your keynote. It was very interesting and insightful. I have one question regarding your North Star metrics. How often should product team change this metric? If everything goes wrong, how to understand that everything goes wrong? Or maybe we can choose 2 North Star metrics regarding your experience. How does it work?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So just to recap, the question was how often should a product team change their North Star metric? So there's no clear answer to that, but what I would say is it all depends on your strategy. If your strategy changes, then your North Star metrics should change. So Amplitude's North Star metric, actually, that's brand new. We changed that in January. For the last 2 years, we've used a different North Star metric. And what we saw is as our product became more complex and deep, as we built out features and it helped solve more problems for customers, it became more complex, and we needed a new strategy to help grow as a business, essentially. And so we adopted the North Star metric. So my only answer to that really is you shouldn't change your North Star metric all the time, but it's okay to change it as your strategy, your product strategy changes.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.
Next.
Hi, Richard.
Hello.
Thank you for the speech. Is it possible for Amplitude's clients to set some metric as the North Star, to mark one of the existing metrics in the Amplitude's interface as the North Star metric for them?
Sorry, repeat that. Is it possible
For Amplitude's clients, for your clients?
Yeah.
If I am your client,
Yeah.
the client of Amplitude's service,
Yeah.
then I track a lot of metrics such as ARPU, LTV, and so on.
Yeah.
Is it possible in your interface to mark some metric, to set some metric as the North Star one?
So I think there's two parts to that. So firstly, are you asking about actually how you would get the data from into Amplitude, or is it more about just are you able to measure the North Star metric in Amplitude?
Check it. This metric is the North Star for me.
Okay. So yes, you can. So very much one use case for Amplitude is to do KPI monitoring. So we have a North Star dashboard that we set up where we can track all of these metrics that I talked about in a single place, and it's shared around the organization. So yeah, very much so.
Thank you. Еще? Нет? I have a question. Thank you for conception of games, of free type of games. Do you know another type of game which company can play, or do you know examples of companies who mix different type of games? And what should I do if I?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So, in our view, those are the three games. We can't think of any others that companies could be using. If anyone has any thoughts on that, I'd love to hear. But sometimes it's hard. It depends on the business. Sometimes it's hard for customers or users to pick one game. Sometimes they think, well, hang on, I'm playing this game and this game. I could be playing all three games. But ultimately, strategy is about what you do as much as what you don't do. So we think in order to align your strategy, you should be picking one game. If you think about, let's take Amazon, for example. They're playing the transaction game. If they suddenly, this is probably not a great example, but if they suddenly decided they were playing the attention game and they were trying to get users to spend more time in their platform, actually, that could have a negative impact on their revenue and their business. So it's really important that they align behind the idea that they're playing the transaction game. I don't think that's a great example because it's quite clear which game they're playing. I think gaming's quite a difficult one. Gaming could be playing transaction, it could be playing attention, but ultimately it's about what you should be focusing on, the most. Okay, thank you.
Давайте последний.
Thank you for a nice presentation.
Thank you.
You mentioned that North Star metric should be leading indicator for the revenue. Do you mean there should be like a logical relationship or statistical one?
A statistical one. Or both,
like,
really.
You should test it.
So
do you
again,
test it in Amplitude?
Yeah, so I think our one's a bit, because we're not transactional, ours is a bit harder. So if I think about Amplitude's North Star, it's very much statistical. We know that that's a good leading indicator of a customer renewing their contract with us. So it's an indication of a customer getting value. And we've done we've got a data team in the US. They've done a ton of analysis around this. So this is very much a data-informed North Star. I guess with other customers, it's a bit easier. You know, if you are an e-commerce site, it's very easy to see where that tie is between transactions and revenue. But I think in most cases, it's probably statistical.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's a topic of our tomorrow workshop, how to
segue,
define it
yeah.
and so on.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Richard.
Thank you.